Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and contorted epitomes to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom, the very lowest of men. I'm back once again. I'm here with a state of play today. This is where we go in depth with faction specialists from around the world, some of the very best players at their chosen armies, and get the top tricks and tips about how you can leverage that army yourself. And I am very fortunate because I can draw on one of my longtime buddies and teammates today. It is the true Demon Lord, which might give you a clue. It is Franco. Franco, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very good. Yourself?
I'm really well. Yeah, I'm really well. I don't know about you. It's
Good.
very hot here in the UK right now.
Oh, mate, I'm sweating it out. It
It's
really is
really warm.
terrible.
This is the
It
time of the
is.
year where you're like, maybe I'm in the wrong business here. Mate.
Yeah,
It's quite
definitely.
warm, but yeah,
Hmm.
no, I'm generally doing great, and obviously really excited to have you on
Good.
to chat Chaos Demons because you and me go a long way back. And I was remembering before the show that one
We
of the first
do
times we properly hung out was at Beachhead Brawl before COVID, and I remember
before
you
COVID. Yeah.
furiously painting up a Beast of Nurgle in the hotel that night because you had a whole pot of summoning, as was the way back then.
Yeah, I had like 600 points worth of summoning, and I'm like walking up to the table, and people going, "Where's most of your list?" And I'm like, "In this box," and they're like, and they were like, "Oh, well, what can you summon?" I'm like, "Any of this." It's like, "Oh, okay." So I haven't. You. They're like, "Oh, we have no idea." I'm like, "No, you have no idea. Neither do I. We'll just go with it."
Amazing. I mean, such a glorious
Mm.
sort of bag of tricks that you could pull back then.
Yeah,
Really, really
it
fun.
was
And
cool.
tricks is what demons are all about, as we'll be getting into. So, Franco,
Exactly.
obviously, you've been playing with 6++ for quite a while now, but you have also
Mhm.
recently, well, over the long term, but also very recently started branching out with a bunch of demons related content. Do you want to talk and tell the listener about that?
Yeah, so of course the true demon lord, that is me, obviously. But we have the channel which properly got started about 4 weeks ago, releasing
Mhm,
videos over the last 3 weeks, and
mhm.
in those 3 weeks we've hit 200 subscribers, which I'm incredibly chuffed with.
Amazing work.
And we've had a lot of great feedback with that, so that's really good, and that's kicked off quite well. But we've been doing like written content for a good 2, 3 years now, and obviously Facebook stuff, Instagram stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just about trying to build up the faction that I'm incredibly passionate about, the faction I played for 17 odd years, and trying to do something that I never had, which was a solely um, dedicated like content source by a player that literally is solely dedicated to the faction. And it's something I wish I had growing up playing the faction as a teenager and all that stuff, and unfortunately never had. So
Mm.
if I can do that and help out new and existing demon players and just give people a new way to look on the faction, or just help people out in maybe parts of the game with the army that they're stuck on, then that's what it's all about for me. It's not about anything else, just trying to build this community of this faction that I love very much.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and that's what I love about the state of players. You can get people on who where the real passion and the connection to the army shines through. And
Yeah.
I think with you and demons, that it's a match made in heaven. You go a long way back. You know them inside
Yeah,
out.
we
There's
do. I do.
no models you don't have at this stage, I imagine.
I think I'm climbing close to 30K at this point. I've got to the point where I've got everything plastic, or GW, should I say? And then now I'm circulating to more third party stuff like Creature Cast stuff and all that. Just I want more new models. So like I've got like six Keepers of Secrets and like two different Shalaxes at this point, just because I'm collecting
Amazing.
things from everywhere. And yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So where I always like to start, I mean, before we get into the current 10th index and rules, I always like to ask people where they kind of see their faction as fitting in the competitive game generally, like what its special niche is, what its particular strengths and weaknesses generally are across time. And what would you say that place is for demons? Because obviously they're quite a unique army in a whole bunch of ways, really.
Yeah, so I think with us, 'cause we are very different as a faction. I mean, I know every faction has their gimmick, but I think we are just generally very unique.
Mm,
And for instance, like the thing is with demons is when you play the game, but you're also playing a bit of a mental game as well because you've got your better ways to deep strike, like other armies have. But the 6 inch deep strike is something unique to us,
mhm,
and it's something very real because you can charge after that. And we have a lot of good big combat threats that love that 6 inch charge. So the thing is with demons, because you've got the constant up and down, you've got being able to get three away, being able to get six away, you're playing a bit of a mental game. And then certain units, like say, for example, Shalaxi, who's
mm,
very, very scary, she alone creates a whole new aspect to approach a game because you can use her as a way to off put your opponent. So you're playing not just the physical dice game itself, but you're also playing a mental game with your opponent. And
mhm.
and it's something that's quite fun, especially when
Yes.
you see your opponent just unraveling trying to figure out, I've got this 6 inches deep shot that can come from anywhere, so I've got to make sure I'm screening that, and then I've got to make sure I'm screening out Bellor plus the extra inches, and then can I be hit from the front? And so yeah, as a whole, I think we're in a pretty good spot. Like we're not top, but we're not nobody at the bottom. We're probably nice in the middle,
Mhm.
like top of like B tier, which I like. I think is a good spot for us because we're not going to get hit too hard by it or jumped on by the people that like to jump on the good factions. But at the same time, people who maybe aren't how to say it without it sounding bad, but people that maybe aren't too top tier, if you know what I mean,
Mhm.
like standard cyber players can still have fun and play well if you
Yes.
know what you're doing with a couple reps in and all that kind of stuff, as well as players like myself who have been playing the faction for a while and know it inside out. We can
Mhm.
get really good results out of it. So yeah, I think overall we're in a really decent spot until codexes and that come about.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, overall I'm quite happy with where we are.
Yeah, completely. I'd agree. Obviously, they got some buffs in terms of points drops in the last. Well, not this day state, but the one before.
Not the last one,
Not
yeah.
the last. No, we'll talk about that. But
No,
they certainly
yeah,
got an injection of funds and resources. And as you
yes,
say, it's
definitely.
an index that's expressive, it's innovative, it's different. There's a lot of ways to use it, and a lot of units that can shine in it. And you see a bunch of different demons builds, which I think is really cool. And they definitely are now in a place where, as you say, you can have a lot of fun playing demons, and then there is also that upper ceiling for very skilled players as well, which is a really awesome place for them to be, without them becoming just to say that they were very popular towards the end of 9th edition. So I can imagine that's less fun for you as
Yes.
someone who likes
Eh,
to have
eh,
be the king.
yeah, I have main character complex, right? I like to be the best at what I do, and I see myself as like one of the top guys for demons, whether it be because of my player skill or just because I do a lot of like play more than probably most people in the world with the faction. So when there was a lot more people on there, I was a bit like, go away, leave me alone. This is mine. Get
I
behind.
know
So
that feeling all too well with the Drukhari as well. I've
mhm,
definitely lived through that time. So okay,
you have.
wonderful. Right, let's start thinking about the 10th edition Demons Index then. Right, so obviously the sort of the major headline for this in terms of its army rules is the sort of shadow of chaos and the fact that you can have kind of close range deep striking if you control chunks of the board, but also
Mhm.
pivoting around Bellicor as well. Right. So in
Yes.
your games and in your play, you've kind of alluded to this mental game already, but what kind of opportunities does having these close delivery mechanisms for an army like demons give you in the game?
So, of course, when it comes to range attacks, we lack a bit. Like we have a bit, but so we can't really play that back and forth like at range game. So
Hmm.
the whole thing is to get close, we really have to do damage aside from say the Lord of Change or stuff like that.
Hmm.
So being able to get in closer, because though a lot of our stuff does have 4 up in ones, we also have a lot with 5 up in ones, and 4 up and 5 up in ones are good when they roll high. When they roll low, they're not good. So being able to not have to worry about being stuck in the middle of nowhere and being able to fit in all those kind of gaps that maybe your opponent might not expect if they make the mistake. Because demons are very much an army that we punish you when you make your mistakes. If you make a mistake and you know what you're doing with if your opponent makes a mistake, you know what you're doing with demons, you can punish them. Like I've played
Hugely.
against some very good players, like the captain of Team Ireland, Lewis Ballington, and Mine Goblins, etc. Very good players that have made just one or two little mistakes, and because again I play so much with the faction, I know how to capitalize on those mistakes. And a game that looks very bad, they've left me one little gap and they've not quite tagged the units they need to tag. Being able to pick up Bellor and dropping them back and just happening to get certain cards or whatever, and then you just get in those gaps. So
Mm.
I find demons are very much we like to go second and we like to react to how our
Yes.
opponent plays and how the list goes. So whatever, like whenever you see small mistakes made, you've got to kind of punish them and make your opponent really suffer for making those mistakes.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. And it creates enormous delivery potential as we'll get into the
Yeah.
strats combo really well with it. And it is one of
Mhm.
those things where I say, in my experience, there's a few armies out there where it's like no matter how many times you play it, you cannot maintain focus across a whole 5 turn game. They'll get in somewhere at some point, right? I've never managed to do
Exactly.
it without at some point creating a pocket that causes enormous problems, and so it sort of breaks open that conventional game plan of, well, here's our two armies, we're going to wiggle around each other. It's sort of like, actually no, I'm jumping in and slicing and finding all kinds of interesting angles on you. And as you say, because they're not really a shooting army, they've got a bit, but they're not really a shooting army. It means that you can hit on your terms, right, and get the job done, which is, I think, a really, really useful thing. So let's talk about the stratagems, because there's one or two stratagems that really help you to explore exploit this and this ability to come in from deep strike and hit people in the face. So what do you
Mhm.
think are the kind of key stratagems in this index for getting the most out of demons?
So, I mean, out of the six, we haven't really got a bad stratagem. Like they all have their places, but there are definitely two that stand above the rest, which is
Mhm.
Denizens the Walk, which is your basic 3-inch deep strike, which
Amazing.
is a common now. Like or most armies tend to have at least one detachment that has it, or maybe one unit that has that kind of ability. So,
Mhm.
but the 3-inch deep strike is phenomenal. It allows Bellor to fit in to any pocket that allows him to benefit by pushing his units that come within 6 of him and 6 away. So you can kind of get him in those gaps to be able to make the most of what you can drop around him, and being able to steal objectives by doing that. The amount of times people don't screen out the 4 inches of the objective. So dropping, there isn't anything more funny than dropping 10 pink horrors in your opponent's backfield objective. Because then it's like, now you've got the 2 or 3 or 4 greater demons in the middle, and now you've got 10 pink horrors in the back, and pink horrors are not very nice to deal with.
No.
For anyone that has had to deal with them, I love pink horrors. Like
Yeah.
I personally think they're amazing. So yeah, Denizens of what we all know how powerful 3-inch deep strikes are, but we have units that can in the shadows.
Mhm.
Um, and that just gives us continuous play throughout the game. So being able to start a bit more in reserve, maybe up Bellor and then bring him back down and bring your blood crashes, your Shalaxi, whatever, or just late game picking up Nurglings, picking up pink horrors, being able to continuously play the cards, being able
Mhm.
to consistently give that a threat of being able to steal objectives, and always being able to just again force your opponent to have to screen and maybe sacrifice some of their key resources to keep those screens going,
Mhm.
which though you may not be able to get in those gaps, then stops your opponent having maybe as much as they would like forward, which then gives you a bit of an advantage in the middle. So yeah, so obviously they are two incredibly good stratagems. A couple others we like are +1 AP from Drought with Terror, which gives you reroll wounds against battleshops units. That's really good. It ups the damage of your stuff by a lot, especially on things like Lord of Change, making that AP3 now.
Mhm.
Um, Advance and Charge while you're in the shadows. Advance and Charge is good. We all know how good Advance Charge is on units like Shalaxi or Blood Crushes. It's pretty amazing.
Amazing.
Overall, we've got some pretty good stratagems. I think if you know when to use, we have some very situational ones, but if you know exactly when to use them, you can get some really good use out of them.
Yeah, completely. As I said, it keeps the army recycling into different places on the board, keeps the opponent incredibly honest. 3-inch deep striking is a nightmare because either you spread out all over the points like a lemon, or you don't, and then you get it taken off you by
And then you
horrors
get
or
it taken
plague
off you.
bearers or whatever else.
Yeah,
And obviously,
yeah.
yeah, the Bellicle combo is the one that's caught me out before because obviously he can come in 3 inches away, which then in turn
Hmm.
creates a pocket for his 6-inch charge range, right? So it's very hard to stop that.
Exactly. Yeah, I always at the beginning of every game, the first thing I say to my opponents is, "Do you know what I can do?" Because I don't want to catch people out. We are very much an army that can catch people out, and if they go,
Yeah.
explain it to me or no, then I explain the normal stuff, the uppy down and all that, and then I explain the Bellicle trick and I explain the 3-inch deep strike. And then I'm like, right, now I've told you. You can ask me and I'll tell you again, but I've told you. And then if they leave the gap during the game, I'm like, I've told you and you've let me get in that gap. And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. And they're like, oh no. But yeah, I always make sure people know what they're going up against with that because it is very much a gotcha if you don't explain it. So like you don't want to catch people out like that if they don't know about it. But if they know about it and then don't screen,
Yeah, I think
fault on them
it's
in
one
it
of those
really.
tools, isn't it? Where like even if you know, it's still so hard to consistently play around.
It is one little mistake and you just let it in and then you're in trouble. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there? Would you say there are particular types of armies that are more vulnerable to that toolkit in terms of the being able to relocate and drop into places? What kind of things do demons really like to play against?
I mean anything that's low unit count really.
Yeah.
So not knights and chaos knights I think are very good. Chaos knights obviously can get around a bit because they can go through walls and that, but still like you can get around them. They're harder to screen. Any it's not like they have real. Maybe Chaos Knights a bit more because they can take Nurglings, but anytime they lose their assets, they lose their War Dogs or Armigers or the big knights, it's a big loss for them. So
Mm.
stuff like that is quite nice. Um, and yeah, just any army that isn't really able to screen you across, like any army that has a lot of units, like sisters or armies that are able to get a lot of models on the board, orcs, guard, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Then that's when it's a bit annoying because it means we have less. space to play with. But
Yeah, I find that with GSC as well. Like, it's all fun and games
yeah,
dropping in, and then
GSC.
suddenly certain armies just carpet. I think Nids is another one where it's like it's just a
Yeah,
carpet,
Nits as
and it's
well.
it's a real
Hmm.
pain actually finding the space. But as you say, it just punishes elite armies, and especially like
Yeah,
things like
definitely.
elves hate it because if you're dropping in places they don't want, they start losing things they don't want. That their whole game really suffers. So it's an incredibly
Yeah.
powerful set of tools. In terms of the enhancements, are there any enhancements in this index that you like, Franco? I know what you're going to say.
Does is it the Great and Clean one? Is that
Yeah.
what you're talking about? Yeah. So every demon player loves that, and every non-demon player hates it, right? Because you're only taking a toughness 12, 20 wound model with a 4-up in one, and you're plonking him down, and then you're giving him a 5-up in 5-up for no pain that turns to a 4+ in the shadows. You can make the shadows happen fairly easy around in Bellor, sticky objective, whatever you want to do with it. So yeah, of course that is my favorite, as is probably every demon player's.
I love it.
But
I'm a
the
huge
other
Great Unclean One fan, so I'm here for it.
yeah, I think everyone loves the fat boy, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there is nothing more funny than when you rock up to a table where you're maybe a bit rushed, so your opponent hasn't looked at your list yet. And I mean, if like I'm at a point where people know kind of who I am, so they kind of guess it. But like, on the odd occasion, like when people go, "Oh, so what you like? You got demons? What have you got?" And you just put the fat boy down, and their face just goes, "Oh Jesus!" Like I don't want to have to deal with that. And it's like, cool, I'm going to put him there. And they go, cool, I'm just not going to go there. I'm not dealing with it. And I'm
That's
like,
it.
cool. So
He
of
gives
course
you
that's
some
amazing.
actual sort of solidity on the board, doesn't he? It's like a genuine like pivot
Yeah.
point for the rest to kind of move around from.
Yeah, because he's really hard to deal with, and there's not many armies that can deal with him and everything else you have in a game. So,
Yeah.
the other thing I love, the other enhancement I love is the Everstave and the chicken because it's really
Okay.
good. The chicken shooting is fairly solid, so it increases the range by 6 inches in the shadows, so 24 and 18, and then makes him strength 12 and strength 11 with the +2 strength in the shadows. So, just allows him to really hit those things that you might struggle with. The
Mm,
chicken's kind of our counter, like one of our big problems is dealing with delicate transports. The Sheikah kind of solves that.
mm,
He can smash into something and kill it, as well as wound it with the other shots he has because he can split his fire if he needs to. And then you can kind of use your other fire because we have some pretty decent firepower on the big guys. Just the chicken's anyone that can really focus down. But if you use that, some of his with others to pick up bits and pieces, you can do like work over time. So he really gives you a nice solid shooting platform. Um, the other two are okay. Like the Sneshi one where you get wounds back every time you kill a model is nice on a keeper, but
mhm.
um, like it's okay. And then the blood or the corn one, sorry, gives you +1 strength, +1 strength, +1 attack, which again is not terrible on a big smashy monster. Like you
Mm.
don't hate it, but I feel like you could take a blood dust or you could take a keeper of secrets and not need it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're taking a ground clean one or if you're taking a chicken, you're always taking that on the first one. So
Completely, yeah, absolutely, and that kind of leads us towards the units because we're sort of alluding to it already. But it's not a bad time for the big monsters, is
yes,
it? So run us
no.
through the roles. I think to say we've already alluded to it with the enhancements, but which of the greater demons are you kind of drawn to at the moment, and why? Who do you not leave home without?
So for me, this is I don't wanna say controversial, but it's a bit of an argument. Some people don't like her because she's too expensive. Some people love her. I've been a big supporter of her since day one. And that's Shalaxi. I think she's
Galaxy
insane.
Hellbane, hell yeah.
I yeah, like I just played one of my league game at my local club yesterday, and I played against a decent player running knights, and she picked up over 1,400 points on her own. Like does this
Ooh.
all the time. But every time I play Knights, I'm like, cool, I've got Shalaxi, and I know that that's going to be a fairly decent matchup because of her. So she's insane. She takes way too much to kill most of the time. Like at first, I was like, I get lucky and she survives a bit, but she does it so often at every event now. Like there's at least 2 or 3 games that she'll just take way more than she should, to the point where I'm like, that's just what she does.
Hmm.
So she's incredibly tough. Her damage is unreal. She's probably the only thing the only thing we have in our index that I will send into something, and if it doesn't die, I will be genuinely shocked. Like everything else, I'm like, I could kill it, but there is a chance I might not. However, it's if I don't kill it, I'm generally going to be shocked. So I think you don't leave home without her. The ground clean one with the endless gift is stupidly insanely tough. You move him up to an objective. You maybe give a little bit of screening help. You make sure he's got the shadows up, and then you just leave him to do his thing. Your opponent's either if your opponent's trying to deal with him, they've generally dealt with anything else, and at that point, you're probably not going too well for you anyway. Because
Hmm.
most people just look at it and go, I just can't deal with that. Not while there's other stuff on the board. There's no point. The chicken with the Everstave gives you really good shooting. Like I said, like the 24 and 18-inch range, strength 12, strength 11, sustained
Mm.
D3 on the big shots. Like he's really solid, and in an army where we lack with some of that firepower, he's really nice to have.
Mm.
So for me, they're the best ones. Scarbrand is also pretty good. Flat
Yeah.
6 damage in combat, strength 16 is pretty nuts. So like generally, all he has to do is get 2 or 3 wounds through on vehicles, and they're going to die. Like, and there's nothing more funny than your opponent getting him down to like 3 or 4 or 5 wounds and be like, "Oh, so is he bracketed?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's bracketed." Now he's got 2 extra attacks, and it's like, "Oh, what? Like, no." So like you just made him better. And then so for me, like the first 3 is my pick at the moment, but Scarbrand I think is pretty good. Some people love the Bloodthirster. I have a love-hate relationship with the Bloodthirster because mine just never wants to do anything. Like mine literally fell 28 out of 35 6-inch charges in like the space of 5 or 6 events. 20 of those were like re-rolls. So at that point, mine kind of went out the window. He also doesn't like the kill stuff, but then there are other players like Luke Townsend who just won the Saffron GT. Credits that win largely to the Bloodthirster. So like the Bloodthirster is a big smashing monster. He's pretty good. I just have a bit of a hatred bias towards him because he's just never performed for me.
Yeah.
I do think keepers as well are really interesting. Like I really want to try out maybe going back to that 8th edition, like a keeper heavy list, because I think they're really fast and they're actually surprisingly tough.
Mm.
-1 to hit and feel no 4 up invuln, 5 up for no pain. And then if you take the mask, you can get them to be -1 to wound as well. So I think the chicken, the grit and clean one, both very good. I think they see a lot of lists.
Mm.
Scarbrand and Shalaxy is personal taste, but I think Shalaxy is unreal.
Mm.
The Bloodthirster is my personal taste, and then I think the keepers, if you build rightly, you can get something out of them. So I don't think any of them are bad.
No.
You can come on any of them. You've just got to build towards them generally.
Yeah, I've
And
seen
then
I've seen I've seen people taking Rotigus as well. He's been quite popular
I
lately.
I completely forgot about Rogue. Because yeah, as well, he was in there before Scarbrand does. He's insane,
Yeah.
especially if you're taking like I love my troops, and I take 20 pink horrors, 10 plague bearers at the moment. I do want to run a list where I run a lot more, and
Yeah.
if you're going to do that, you take him. And I think with the current Boogeyman Orc 120 boy list, Rotigus might be almost key because of
Yeah.
his 6-inch half OC, half movement. Like you drop him 3 away, you try to stop you getting swamped on the primary.
Mm.
He helps with that, and then he just slows that army down as well. So,
Mhm.
and he's also got pretty good damage and makes noble stuff pretty good with +1 damage as well. So,
Completely.
yeah, I completely forgot about him, but Rotigus is pretty nuts as well. So,
Yeah, and he's coming in at a decent price point at the moment as well. I think both the Grow and Clean ones are a good price.
yeah, the ground team and standard as well as Rotigus, but they're both 230 and then 260 if you take the endless gift, which is worth it. And like you're getting T12 with 20 wounds or 22 wounds on Rotigus, 4 up invulns, 6 up feel no pain standard on the ground clean mode, which is an aura, so he can give it to Rotigus, and then obviously the endless gift pumps it up to a 5 or a 4. So for the amount of points you pay, like to get 3 ground clean ones and Rotigus for less than 1,000 points
It's
of just
amazing.
unreal toughness. Yeah, they are so good for their points.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where does old Bellicor fit into this then, Franco? Because he doesn't seem to ever not get taken these days.
No, so again, there is a legitimate argument here. Some people hate him and can't stand him. Some people, like myself, are like, you have to take him. And the thing is, I think if you listen to my games during events, the phrase "I hate Be'lakor so much" comes up very often, which is sad because Be'lakor is my favorite character lore wise, full
Yeah,
stop, and he's the model that got me into 40k.
yeah.
So for me, um, yeah, it's a bit sad. Like Be'lakor rules wise, so obviously the shadow bubble I think is the best part about him, but then
Mhm.
obviously Reef the Shades, the lone up 18-inch bubble is all really good, and especially in metas where shooting is definitely a thing.
Mm.
Yeah, he's insane. But then when he rocks up, this big, fearsome demon lord that is like meant to be like thousands and thousands or millions and millions of years old and unmatched in combat, and he walks into a rhino and can't kill it. That's just sad, right? Like it's not good. So I wish he was a bit better in combat. Though he's shooting, I really think his
It's
shooting's
when I
underrated.
play against him, it's the guns. Yeah, the shooting is
Yeah,
deceptively
he
good.
he- he's really good into anything like any Elder or Eldari type
Exactly.
armies, GSC,
Mm.
Guard, even Orcs. Like strength 6, -3, ignore cover, death wound, like 12 shots. Like people
Yeah,
don't really when he shoots, people go, "Oh wow, I didn't know that's how he shot." I'm like, yeah, his shooting is
100%.
better than his combat. It's
Yeah,
really good.
yeah. His shooting into any kind of single wound MSU type stuff is just brutal,
Yeah, he
absolutely
he
brutal.
he can pick up small units, which is again nice because it means you can kind of move from that way to deal with something in combat, and then throw your shots into something else, and generally have a good chance of picking it up, which is
Yeah,
nice.
completely. And it's like as you kind of alluded to, it's just finding those little splashes of shooting, isn't it? They're not really a shooting army, but you'd be mistaken to think they have no guns, and especially if you're
Yeah,
fragile,
so
they really do. Like,
yep. So that's what people say to me. It's like, oh, I don't really have to worry about your shooting much. Maybe apart from the Lord of Change. I'm like, that's incorrect completely. And I explain my shooting. Like, that's how you play your shooting with the demons, because it's still as much a big part of your damage as anything else. Because the chicken does the big damage, and you use him to either smash into something or really hit something hard that's quite tough. And then Bellicor shooting, Shalakti shooting is unreal. Like last night again in that night game, she picked up a war dog at full, not a war dog, an armager at 4 wounds on her own shooting because she just went nuts and rolled 9 sustained hits. Like, so yeah, so you're shooting. You have to again. This is where the experience comes in. You have to know exactly what does well into what profiles, where to
mm,
put it. But you can kind of pick up multiple targets, maybe an extra target more than you probably could by allocating your shooting properly and then going into combat with other things.
completely. Yeah, and that's the thing I think people don't appreciate is that although there's not a ton of guns, the guns that there are solid at particular jobs, and you
Yeah,
have a better set of tools for making sure they find those things than most armies. It's
exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
miles away. It's going to be dropping in, getting an angle you don't expect, and then it
Mhm.
really hurts.
Yeah, because when people say what's your range, I'm like, 18 generally, 12 to 18 most of the time. People are like, oh, that's not that far. And then you're there getting hit by all these 18-inch guns because you've just dropped in 6 away, you've dropped in 3 inches away, and they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot you could just go anywhere you want. I'm like, yeah, wherever I want. And generally, most of these things that have these kind of weapons move like 12 inches anyway. Like the big guys, mostly on average, is about 12. So
Mm.
again, like you're kind of getting where you need to anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the big boys. That's the kind of starring characters. But in terms of the support roles, there's a lot going on. So I guess let's
Mhm.
pick through some of your favorites. What are the kind of supporting cast that you like to bring? What are the different roles they can offer a demons player?
So, I mean, one of my favorites, but I would say is just a favorite in general, no matter who you are, and it's Nurglings. Like they will forever be one of the best units ever.
Yeah,
Nurglings are amazing. Infiltrate, like they take more to kill than you would expect. The -1 to
always.
hit aura is silly good,
Mm,
especially, and I think it's going to be even more important now into orcs.
mm,
And 40 points to have a unit that can score you a good amount of victory points if your opponent doesn't deal with them. Like when I was taking fixed, I was taking deploy, being able to 3 inch drop them in your opponent's backfield. And if your opponent can't get the right angles or doesn't dedicate enough into them, they survive. You auto pass
score
their
all
battle shock
game.
if you need to, and that's another 4 points. Like that's
Yeah,
8 points of a 40 point unit. And then if they do kill it,
yeah,
you're like, wait, that's 40 point unit dead. Let me bring down another one. So
yeah.
Nurglings are Daemons are amazing.
Yeah.
I am a massive lover of pink horrors.
Mhm.
Like for a while, I've been running them. There's been a few lists that have run like 50 or 60 of them, and as much as I would love to run that as someone who does like the horde style playlist, I think I'd end up tearing my hair out trying to win splits and all this and all that. And so, like, I was running 30 at my height so far this edition, and even that could be a little bit
Mm,
unwieldy. But I think pink horrors are amazing. Again, your opponents underestimate them. Like I think my proudest moment this edition was showing Nassim, who is one of the best players in the entire world, just how good pink horrors were. Because he was like, "Man, they're okay," but and then at the end of the game, he was like, "I fucking hate those things." He was like, "I absolutely hate them." I was like, "Yep, that is." I have given a lot of people horror PTSD. So the amount of games that they've won me by just splitting when more than they probably should have, or been able to hold points, because again, 4 up in ones do 4 up in one things. Sometimes you just don't die. And being able to, again, is something that you kind of need to practice with. Being able to split, like the split is a genuine tactic and skill to learn. And armies that have say move shoot move like crons or elder or
mm,
stuff like that, the amount of times you're able to stop them from getting on objectives by just splitting in the right way
yeah.
is really big.
Mm,
um so yeah, pink horrors I think are amazing. Plague bearers are good. Backfield objective holders, innate sticky ability,
yeah.
T5 2 wounds, like they're pretty solid. Flesh Hounds, I think, are some of the best MSU units in the game, just because 70 points for beasts that move 12 inches with 2 wins apiece and a 5-up invuln. I just think they're really good, and their
Really good.
combat is not bad into small stuff as well.
Mhm.
And they've got a nice, really, they've got that small oval base size, which if you spread it, and because you take them in units of 5, you can really spread them body block or
Mm.
move block or screen. Like they are really good. And I'm someone who likes to do a lot of screening and move blocking as well,
Yeah.
and they're just fantastic for it.
Mm.
Flamers, for what they are cheap, small footprint. They drop in if you need to Overwatch against smaller, like weaker units, tough as free stuff. Then they're pretty good at it. Um, Seeker Chariots, I think, are a bit of a weird but interesting choice because though they've got to go around walls and they've got a bit of a weird base, they move 14. They've got assault weapons, so you can advance and action them. And the turn that they charge, they do dev wounds on a 4+ with like 9 attacks against infantry units, which again, into the orc meta, I think is
Mm.
something that could be very interesting.
Yeah.
And you can take them in units of 2 as well, which is really cool. So they're definitely a bit of a weird pick, but I think could maybe see a bit more play.
Mhm.
I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Seekers are pretty good. You know, they've got
Yep.
their good 9 scout move. Again, good for move blocking and early doors secondaries. And then I guess depending on the meta you're in or the country really over here, less so because our terrain's quite built up and most of the time you have to use them on bases, but soul grinders are quite good.
Yes.
Um, I think in America they probably see more play than here because again, most of America doesn't rules that they don't need a base. Where over
Mm.
here, most events do rule you need the base, and that base is you're not moving that, especially on UKTC, which is a very common terrain set over here. Those bases just don't move anywhere. But if you can get the right terrain set and the right build on them, Soul Grinders are pretty good, pretty tough punch, and they're our only source of tank shock as well. And tank shock is very, very good. So
Yeah, they need to let monsters do that, man. It's ridiculous.
yeah, they do. I've argued this so many times. Like monsters should just have it. Like, how can you tell me, like a sentinel, a scout sentinel can tank shot, but a great unclean one can't? To me, how does that make sense?
Makes no
Like,
sense whatsoever.
it
Yeah,
makes
it's
no sense.
absolute rubbish. You've set me up quite nicely because the one combo we've not touched on yet is the old Bloodcrusher and Ren Master situation. And I want to know what your
Yeah,
thoughts, as someone who's
yeah.
presumably tested the limits of this. Where do you sit on sort of this damage stacking situation with Blood Crushers and the Ren Master?
So, so the balanced, level-headed player in me says it shouldn't exist. Like, I don't believe in stacking auras. I don't think it's a good thing. And though, luckily enough, apart from this, I don't really think there's many things that can exploit it
No, there
too
isn't.
much.
No.
So that's a good thing. But I mean, give it time, GW will definitely break it because they're good at doing that. But um, yeah, I mean, I tested it quite heavily when the stacking thing became a thing. I was running Blood Crusher for quite a while. I was taking one unit because they're quite good. And actually something I didn't mention a minute ago, but Blood Crushers are very good.
Mm,
And the list where you kind of focus in on them, very good. I do think the 18 is too much,
I agree.
because they're very susceptible to being move blocked quite easy. Their bases are huge, so even with our closer deep strikes, they're still hard to kind of get where you need them. But I
Mm,
think 12 is good. Maybe 12 and like 2 sixes and a 3 isn't terrible either if you
yeah.
want one small unit. Their damage in combat leaves a lot to be desired unless you've got the Ren
As
Monsters.
swingy, I find, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
they really are. But they rely on a lot of their damage with the mortals and the impact. But I've had them pick up Catan on the charge before, which is pretty amazing.
It's a good
So
time.
and yeah, yeah, it really is. When you're like, oh, you get damage reduction, I don't care. Take all the mortals. So, but yeah, no, it is a really good build. I think 1 to 2 Ren Masters and 2 units of 6 Crushers is a very good base for a lot of lists. I don't really run it partly because a lot of people are running it, and I don't kind of want to run what everyone else is running. It just happens to be what I've been running for a while now. It's a bit popular as well, but I've been running for a while to the point where I'm like, I've
Mm,
been running this for ages, but I can't claim to like have been a big player of the Blood Crusher thing because as much as I like the Blood Crusher stuff and they're good, it's not. I don't know. I find it a bit boring.
mhm.
I love to have the whole move about and jump and tricksy kind of
Yeah.
list where
Which
for me, like,
it's a lot more vulnerable to kind of getting bogged down in a sort of scrap in the middle,
yeah,
isn't it? Really?
it
Yeah.
really is. If they run into something, or if your opponent is smart and they only let you charge certain things, and then they just tag you up with things that they can't really kill. Your blood pressures are stuck, and then if your blood pressure is stuck, you're in trouble.
Mm.
But they're very good as like a piece to hold back and then kind of throw forward mid to late game. Using Bellor to get them forward is a very good little trick with them.
Yeah,
That's hence
that
why I
works
like the one
really well.
unit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I ran a list that was quite troop heavy, but had Shalaxi, Bellor, and the one unit of Crushers,
Yeah.
and being able to just yeet Shalaxi forward to do a lot of damage early on, and then mid to late game use Bellor to bring the Crushers forward, and just if once they hit, they can collapse the flank or collapse the backfield quite nicely. And the amount of times I've had them 6-inch charge onto my opponent's backfield and just because generally if it's on the backfield, it's not that strong anyway, so they'll generally munch that. So yeah, the Blood Crushers are very good. The Ren Masters are amazing. The fact that they
Mm.
stack. Um, and I think there is definitely a good base there of like the Crushers and the Ren Masters. I do think you've got to build around it,
Yes.
but you've got to be careful because I'm very much a big believer of once you play into the really good players, they know how to play into that. They know how to stop that. If you play into someone that knows like myself, I know how to stop that list.
Yeah.
And my list is kind of built to kind of stop that as well. So
Yeah. It's quite
um,
unwieldy, isn't it? It definitely has its
it it
counters.
is it's definitely got a skill ceiling to it, but
Mhm.
it is one of those lists that if you run in and the things go your way or your opponent doesn't know how to really play into it, then you will just run people over and
Yeah.
it like you will
And
just
it's
flink
just
them.
it's very funny into armies whose whole plan was I'm hard to kill, right? It's very, very
Yeah,
funny in that
yeah,
situation.
yeah. Yeah, when they go, oh, I've got all these damage reductions, everyone like, cool. Either I have loads of mortal wounds on the charge, so I don't really care, or all right, you've turned my damage 2 swords into damage 1, now let me turn them back to damage 2 or 3 now. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're a very good counter to a lot of lists that kind of rely on like toughness or just
Mm.
high toughness or like damage reduction stuff like that. Like they're very
Excellent.
good against Catan. Like when Catan were
Yeah.
really everywhere, like less so now, but when they were everywhere, hence why I was taking a unit of 6 of them. Because they're very good into them because you can ignore the damage reductions with the Ren Master buffs and the mortal wounds on the charge and all that kind of stuff.
Completely. And are there any of the smaller supporting demon characters that get in at the moment for you, or is it generally that your characters you focus on the big monsters?
So the thing is, so if you ever look at the demon range, or at least the demon units in the app, out of the 50 odd data sheets we have, at least 21, 22 of them are characters, at
Yeah.
least. So most of the stuff is characters. So assassinate can be a big problem. So
Mhm.
you've got to be careful. And with our monsters being pretty good right now anyway, like you're not going to look into smaller characters, but again it depends on the build. Like the Skullmaster, which is your Herald Corn on Juggernaut, he's a really good support character for the Juggernaut, for the Blood Crusher list. So if you're taking them, you're going to take 1 or 2 of them because they buff
Mhm.
them up quite well, giving them dev wounds on the horns and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The Blue Scribe is still decent, a good little cheap backfield objective holder that is surprisingly tough. The Changeling is also pretty decent, though I've not run him for a while. I think 90 maybe is a bit too high. You can still run him and not feel too bad. If you're running, like I alluded to earlier, the Keeper style list, the Mask is pretty good.
Mm.
Um, and then if you're running Bloodletters, though, I don't really rate Bloodletters that highly right now. But if you do want to run them, because the Ren Masters do definitely make them a lot more worth it. I think the Blood Master is probably the best attachable character we have because he gives them +1 to wound, which is pretty nice.
Mm.
Like he's really good considering the unit he attaches to is generally not that good. Um, but yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of our Herald characters, our Herald level characters, are not fantastic. Or more specifically, the units they buff don't really need the buffs they're giving out. Like a lot of the Nurgle characters, they make them better in combat, but you don't really want your plague bearers in combat, really. And if you are, they're not going to, they're not there to kill things.
Mm.
The Flux Master, which is the Herald, the Zinch Herald and Disc, makes your horrors -1 to hit, which is always nice. And then they basically want to put around fate dice on their hit, wound, or saving throw, which you use on their wound roll because they have dev wounds in their shot. So they're
Ah.
quite nice to chip some damage around. But like I said, when you're already taking 3 or 4 big guys, which is quite common at the moment, you're not really going to take the little characters because then you just open yourself up to assassinate, and you don't really
Yeah.
need that.
I think at the moment it feels like the best demons list. If you take assassinate, you're in trouble because you suddenly find yourself needing to basically kill everything, including the big great unclean one with his feel no pain, which for a
Yeah,
lot of armies is just not something that's going to happen in 5 turns of
yeah.
40k.
Whenever I play into someone and they go, "Oh, I'm going to take assassinate and bring it down," I'm like, "Yes, just hang
Yeah.
around that." The chick can stay back. The flip point I can make hard to kill, and like Be'lakor can hang around. Like you will probably kill Shalaxi over the course of the game, but at that point she's taken a lot to kill. She's killed a lot in her own turns as well. So at that
Mm.
point, I'm starving you for so many secondary points. And I've played against so many people that have done that, and I'm just like, I'm about to make this like the worst game ever for you. So,
Yeah.
but I try, maybe I'm a bit too nice, but whenever someone like alludes to taking like, oh, I might take that, I'm like, I mean, it's up to you. I wouldn't. And then I let
Yeah.
them make the decision. And then
Yeah.
at the end of the game, when they didn't, the game either they win or it was closer, they were like, I'm so glad you stopped me from taking that. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it
Absolutely.
it is it is a trap, but
Yeah.
we can build into that quite easily with assassinate. So you do have to be careful. Like it's not always a trick for us. Like we can take so many characters, but
Yeah.
you can build it where you can make it look attractive, but actually it's not, which is
Mm.
quite nice.
Completely. And you've alluded to this already, but in terms of your secondary game, you've mentioned playing fixed. How do you
Mhm.
feel about the kind of fixed tactical balance for demons? Do you mix it up? Is have you tried one star more heavily than the other? What do you think?
So you can do either. To be fair,
Yeah, they're good at
you
both.
build you. They're good at both. You can build your list to do one better than the other. You can build your list to do both. I started doing tactical when I was running 5 monsters at the beginning of the edition, and it was going really well. At LGT, in 5 of my games, all 5 of my games, I drew capture enemy outpost turn one, and decided I don't want to do this anymore. So I then built to play. I built to play fixed, and I was having very good times with engage and deploy or always deploy in something else, bring it down, engage, cleanse, depending.
Mm.
Um, and then I played against a very good sisters player who's local to Kent down here, who made me regret my life choices when I went with fixed because I learned just how good castigators were. So that was a while ago, and I've been playing tactical since. But I keep looking like my list doesn't do it. It does fix like any demon list can do fix fairly good, but at the same time, I really want to have a lot of MSU units when I play fixed, and I haven't really got that. I've got more
Mm.
like troop like battle line units quite heavy on. So um, I'm struggling a bit at the moment where I'm finding I'm winning games, but I'm finishing lower down in the higher brackets because of scoring winning games on like high 70s or low 80s because the cards do abandon you sometimes. But like I said, you can do either. I think you can really build into going one way or the other or both.
Mm.
Deploy, we're very good at doing deploy because we can deploy in the middle war game if we need to with the Fat Boy and Nurglings. We can keep throwing units like Nurglings forward to do it. And engage again, we were all over the board, so engage is pretty good for us as well. And cleanse as well, like you can take certain builds where you can really play into cleanse.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think demons in that sense are a bit of a rarity where they have real primary bully potential and they're good at secondaries. You find a lot of armies who tend to be better at one or the other. But
Mhm.
demons can really do it all. It's just a case of carving out that position and taking advantage in the game, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, you've got to build your list. Like you've got to
Yeah.
build your list right, like with anything. But if you build your lists in certain ways, you can achieve different things. You can really bully primary, but you have got to build to it. Blood Crushers, Pink Horror is very good at doing it,
Mm.
and Great Demons, of course, as well.
Yeah, they're amazing. And so the OC on those big boys is a real pain in the ass sometimes. And even if the opponent is
I
stopping you, they're throwing stuff away to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I wish it was better. Like, I do wish the Grand Clean one had like an OC of 8 or 10, maybe, but maybe that's just me being a bit greedy. But yes, like you said, like you can make it so your opponent can stop you, but they've got to extend massively to do so,
Yeah,
and then you just accept a little bit of primary loss. You kill some key units, and then you kind of just roll with it during the game.
completely. Okay, Franco. Well, I think we're approaching towards the end here, but one question I have for you, obviously, so we had a sort of balanced state where demons weren't touched at all. And I
Uh,
guess I'm curious for you. I think I can understand why they've taken that decision at this moment in time. But looking forwards and looking to future balance passes and indeed, I guess, future rules, what aspects of demons would you like to see sort of tuned up and improved? Are there anything that you feel like is kind of not quite hitting the spot at the minute, needs a bit of help?
So Demons and Bloodletters, I think, are in the worst spot. I
Hmm.
think they're just both in very poor spots, especially considering now Orc Boys and the green. Is it the green tide detachment where they get the
Hmm.
5 up in one? That's
Hmm.
8.5 points for a model that's T5 with a 5 up in one that can reroll once when they're over 20, over 10, sorry.
Yeah.
And I look at Bloodletters and Demonettes and I think, how are they 11 and 12 points each on average? Like,
Yeah.
so I definitely points on them, but I actually think it's not even so much points. I think generally we're fairly decent where the points lie. Bellacore could maybe come down a bit, Shalaxi maybe a little bit, but really I think we're fine.
Mm.
I think it's generally so a big thing for a lot of demon players is we want our troops to go back up to like 10 to 20s rather than just 10s,
Yeah.
which a lot of people like to remind me, yeah, but can you imagine pink horrors in units to 20? I'm like, yes, exactly. That's what I want. um, but, but yeah, a lot of us want that. I really would love to see Beast and Nurgle go back up to 5. It has nothing to do with the fact that I have like 30 odd of the bastards and I can only run
they're the
6 of them now.
coolest. They're the cutest model,
But
man. I love the
yeah,
Beast and
and
Ogres so
I
much.
I, I want to love the beast. Like I think they're good for solo drops, but like for me, my playstyle, I want to run a big block of them. Like
Yeah,
I don't want to run one of them. I want to run 5 of them at least. So
yeah,
and also the thing is, like, I think at this point, yes, the demonic incursion detachment is really good. The uppy downy, the 6-inch deep strikes and all that is good. But I want to run a mono god list where I can actually feel good about it and get benefits for doing it. So as much as like I think as far as like where we are now, I think it's fine. We're probably going to start dropping as codexes come out because power creep is a thing, and that's just going to happen. We all need,
mm.
and that's just the nature of indexes versus
Hmm.
codexes. So when slash if that codex comes, which hopefully isn't too far in the future, um, hopefully within the next 6 to 8 months, I think that's when we're going to start looking at looking forward. But I think
Yeah.
as it stands, I think we're fine. Like I said, maybe a little bit of touches on Bloodletters and Demonettes still. But I think as far as unless you're going to really rewrite the rules, I think we are where we are, and that
Yeah.
this is probably the best it's going to get,
Yeah,
really.
it's going to come down to detachments to tease different sort of strands out, isn't it, and give the different areas
Exactly.
flavor. Would you want a codex that goes monogod for its detachments? How do you feel about
Yeah, yeah, because I think that's what you have to do. So you have your undivided detachment, which is what we've got, and that will be our, everyone gets like their uppy downy or like their very mobile detachment, and I guess that would be ours.
that?
And I think you could easily do 6 detachments for demons, so you got one for each god, and I do want one for each god because I think you've got to, right? Because everyone
Yeah,
wants to run mono god lists, and
mm.
I mean it'll probably work the same way as you can take other god units in the detachment, they just don't benefit from the abilities. Because I want a Nurgle detachment like yourself. You're a big Nurgle fan as well, where you can just
My boys.
take your list and just not die, or your
Yeah,
Sinesh list where you're very fast, you're slicing people and like hit and runs. Horn lists where I'm Horn is my least favorite of the gods because it's very stereotypical. You just run forward and punch someone in the face, and that is fun, but it's it's
it's
it's
not
not got all
clever
the
though, is
tricks
it?
to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Or my personal favorite is Zinch. I'm a
yeah,
Zinch boy. I always have been, and I'm a big Zinch boy at heart. So I want a list where not just ranged attacks, but also being able to manipulate the opponent's forces as well, which is what I think Zinch should definitely be
yeah,
able to do. And it just opens up, like we've said, and like we've done a state of play a couple of years ago, and we said the same thing. Was you're basically playing 4 armies in one. Like you've got
yes,
very different play styles. So I feel like they should, if they're going to put the effort into the codex, which I really hope they do, then they need to go down these routes of just making your 4 individual detachments and make them feel like individual armies. And then I would love to see Bellor get his own detachment as well, which I feel like we definitely could.
oh yeah,
Um, and what they do with that, I don't know. Maybe it plays into the Shadows of Chaos a bit more. I would like to see them rework the Shadows of Chaos a little bit because Necrons have something similar in the Canoptech cult, and it is just infinitely better. Like the six
yeah,
inch drop is good, but that is only for the specific in demonic contagion detachment because that's the
yeah.
detachment
So
rule.
maybe
So I'd
different
like to
types
see,
of buffs centered around it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't want them to just make it. We have to, for us to get our abilities that other armies just get innately. Like we have to be in the shadows. I want us to get innate abilities, but then maybe bonuses for the shadows. I want them to
yeah,
maybe rework it slightly. So there's a lot to play around with the codex. I can theory all day. It doesn't really mean anything. I don't write the rules as much as I would love to have a hand in the demon rules. I don't. So I could sit here and talk it all day and give you all the theories and all the things you could do, but at the end of the day, it's not my decision,
no, no.
unfortunately.
We'll see. It's one of those books that I think should be very exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. Franco, my man, thank you
Yeah,
so much for coming on.
definitely.
Do you want to just quickly plug once again your True Demon Lord channel for us?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got the YouTube channel, True Demon Lord, where we focus on everything Chaos Demons, tips, tricks, tactics, how to use certain units, stratagems, characters, models, units, etc., etc. Just a place where new and existing demon players can learn all they can from a very passionate demon player that plays very a lot of competitive events and games and stuff. Please check out the Facebook and the YouTube as well because that's where you can keep up to date with all my uploads, as well as just pictures of like my cool demon stuff that I I like to collect and show off and all that kind of jazz.
Amazing. Yeah, get on there, have a look at True Demon Lord, guys. And if you haven't hit like and subscribe on this video yet, do it now, or we'll send demons to your house. Leave us a comment.
Yes,
Let us
we
know
will.
what you've been playing in Demons. What sorts of things do you like? Really excited to hear it. And obviously, remember, you can support us by becoming a YouTube member now as well. Franco, thanks so much for coming on. Thank you to all of
Thank
you
you for
guys
having me
for
on.
listening. We will see you again soon. Watch out for deep striking demons, guys. They could be anywhere. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.